Hello and welcome back to the channel. My name is Eddie Jennings from EJSLLC.com. This video is going to be another in my RHCE practice session series where I'm preparing for the Red Hat Certified Engineer exam. Before I dive in, I want to thank returning subscribers for watching another video, as well as invite everyone, if you haven't subscribed yet, to click that subscribe button and ring the bell when you do so you can be aware of when new content comes available. Also, if you enjoy the video or find it useful, don't forget to click that like button and share with others if you feel they would find the content useful as well. This video is going to work on the first objective within the Create Ansible Plays and Playbooks objective list for the RHCE, and it will be looking at know how to work with commonly used Ansible modules. I want to remind you that this isn't necessarily intended to be authoritative information, nor is it intended to be a tutorial, but rather it's an opportunity for me to talk about whatever objective is at hand and do a self-assessment to see if I feel confident in handling potential exam tasks about that objective. And at the end of the video, if I feel pretty confident, then that's a good thing. If not, then I know what I need to fill the knowledge gap on between now and my exam, which is in just under 3 weeks. That being said, I do intend for the information to be accurate as much as I can, and also if you're working on the RHCE yourself and you're using my videos as a potential resource, perhaps you would see some of the troubleshooting stuff that I do in the video. In particular, if I happen to get stuck on something, that might give you some ideas for your own study as far as particular strategies to handle problems. So getting right into it, this particular objective annoys me just a bit, the know how to work with commonly used Ansible modules, because the question becomes, what is a commonly used Ansible module? And if you're a person that's new to using Ansible or new or relatively new to Linux administration, you might not know, what some of the commonly used modules are. There's really no good list for me to do for this, but what I'm going to do is work with a few modules that I think would be fairly commonly used in administration scenarios. Of course, there's no way for me to know, but I kind of think about what system administrators would need to be doing, and these modules kind of line up with some of the ideals that I have with that. Now, of course, this isn't an exhaustive list, and I'm not doing a ton of modules in this video because there's a whole section of objectives that are about doing specific tasks, which those specific tasks are going to bring up several modules. So I'm trying to avoid some of the modules that I might be using in those tasks, just to keep from having to double cover the material. So I'm already logged into my Ansible control node, and I've already sudoed into the Ansible user account. And the first module that we're going to look at is the Debug Module, which you've seen that in several videos, but I decided to add it to this because I think it's something that you would commonly be using in system administration. So let's make a playbook, and we're actually going to be doing a couple of playbooks in this, but the first playbook is going to be debug test.yml. And one of the things that I think is important to understand about the debug module and some of the value that it would have, especially on the exam, is it can be a great module for being able to test some Ansible facts. For example, let's name our playbook, gather the facts. And I know that you might be thinking, hey, we have the setup module for that. That is true, but there's a reason why I am wanting to use the setup module for this. So host, we'll just do this against the first lab server. No sense in running this multiple times. And so debug module, there are a couple of options that go with that. The two you're going to be using most often are going to be message and var, which I think might be really the only two big options there. And the message does exactly what it says. It will print out a message when the module fires off, and the var option will print the value of whatever variable that you feed it. So what I'm going to do in my message here is show the facts, and I'm simply going to do the variable Ansible facts. 3 dots to end the YAML file. Close that, and we'll use Ansible playbook, and let's run debug test. All right, so it got a ton of information. This isn't really readable just because, it's one text line of all of this stuff. So let me do this again, but this time set the variable value instead. Oh, I don't want to run the playbook again, except the message value. var Ansible facts. Now notice I didn't do the braces for this. There are a couple of options within some modules that don't require the use of the braces, and it's just from the fact that that particular option is expecting to get a variable, so you don't have to do the braces to signify that you're using a variable. But I believe you can if you wanted to. So let's run this again. And this is much more readable. Now the reason why I like using the debug module for this is all of the Ansible fact variables that will come out of this are going to come out with the notation of you would have Ansible facts, and then you're drilling down into different properties of Ansible facts rather than the method of having the little Ansible inline variables. So one thing that I'm probably going to do on my test is something like this. So I'm going to run the Ansible playbook, and I'm just going to save that to facts.txt. That takes a few seconds or so, and if I were to cat that, or actually let me do tail for facts. And I do that because it will give me all of the common Ansible facts that I might be using with other modules. And so rather than having to like run this module multiple times, it might be useful on your exam. And as I said, I'm probably going to do this to just run this and redirect the output to a text file so you have that as a reference. And then of course, if we want to, we can specify certain facts rather than just all Ansible facts. Let me do an example of that. Let's see, let's look at default IPv4. It looks like this at the top level. So let's edit our playbook here, debug test, Ansible facts. We'll append to that, and default IPv4. I think that's what that was called. When in doubt, we can do this. So grep default from facts. Yep, default IPv4. So let's run our playbook once more. And that gets us that particular Ansible fact and all of its values. Super useful, I think, for the exam, because ultimately, kind of as a test for your playbooks, you might want to use the debug module for that, which we actually are going to use in our later playbook. Another module that we're going to be looking at is the yum module. And this is for installing packages. So, and there's actually a module called packages that if you're working in a mixed environment, like some of your systems are Debian based and some of your systems are Red Hat based, I believe the packages module will function just as the same as yum, but instead it figures out what the default package manager is on your system and then uses that to perform whatever the tasks are that need to occur. So we're going to start kind of building our playbook for this. And basically what this playbook is going to do is configure a basic web server. And so I think the modules that I have kind of lined up are going to work with that. So let's make our playbook here. Deploy web server .yml. All right, so name basic Apache deployment. Just going to do this on the first host. We're going to become, because we are going to need root privileges for the things that we're going to do, and tasks. So the modules that we're going to be working with, we're going to be using the debug module some. And the idea behind this, you don't have to do this in the playbook, but I'm just going to kind of show you where it could be useful for some troubleshooting and such with your plays. We'll be using the yum module, so let's go ahead and take care of that. So we're going to install Apache. I'm also going to install Firewall D as well. It should be installed already, but just in case. So yum, the option that we want is name. We have to get, and this can be a comma separated list. You can also do like a YAML list with this. You can also run it through the loop option, but using the list within the name value itself is going to be more efficient than doing the loop option, because that will just take care of it all, versus the loop option is going to loop through the task multiple times. So HTTPD, Firewall D, and then the state. So the states that I've found myself using the most often in my practice are both present and absent. Absent, obviously removing something, present, making sure it's there. And then there's also a latest. And what latest is going to do is make sure that it is the latest version of the module. So when you run this playbook again, if there is an update for HTTPD or Firewall D, it's going to grab that update. All right, the next module that we're going to look at is the service module. So let me make another task, and we're going to configure the HTTPD service. So as the module says, the name is service module. We give it the name of a service, which in this case is HTTPD. We want its state to be started, and we want this to be enabled. And this is something big to remember for any Red Hat exam. Every configuration you do is going to have to survive a reboot. So if you have a playbook where you're having to configure a service, don't forget to do the enabled for that. Now, if we want to, we could do a loop through this, and we could have it run both against HTTPD and Firewall D. And let's do that. So loop, and we're going to list in our loop. Remember, the little tack symbol is denoting a list. HTTPD and Firewall D. So we change this to the variable item, because I think the loop is the same as with items, and there are several different loop things that would be with underscore whatever. I'm not familiar with many of them, because I think the eventual plan for Ansible is that stuff is going to be either incorporated into loop or somehow done in that way, but that's where the little item comes from. And if you start a line with a variable name, you do have to begin and end with quotation marks for that. That's a particular YAML gotcha. All right, so let's see another module that we want to work with here. This actually was not officially on my list, but I guess we'll do it anyway. Firewall D module. What we're going to have to do we're going to do configure the firewall. So we'll use the Firewall D module. And you can either tell it the, I believe, service or port. I often will do port. So we're going to do port 80 TCP. The state is going to be enabled, which that means that we're allowing the traffic for it. And we want this to be in effect immediately. There we go. And we also want it to be permanent, because remember with Firewall D you have your running configuration of the firewall, and then you have the permanent configuration, and often when you make a change to the permanent configuration you have to do firewall command -- reload. This immediate yes, permanent yes takes care of that for you. Let's go out of the file for a moment. Let's take a look at documentation real quick. Look at Firewall D. Just want to make sure I was telling you right. Service, yep, you can do that. You can also indicate particular interface that you'd want to do this on, as well as you should be able to say what zone. Yep, there's an option for zone. Now, my advice, or at least I say my advice as if I've passed the exam. Obviously I haven't passed the exam yet, but my approach with this is what I try to have either memorized or in the front side of my head are some of the common options with these modules, but be aware of where to quickly get the documentation if I need to, configure a particular rich rule, which would be a much more fine-grained configuration. So we'll go back to our deploy web server. So we got the firewall configured. Let's see. Another module that I wanted to look at was the template module, even though there's going to be a whole thing on templates with this, but I'll at least introduce the module to you. And for this, we're going to populate the index file. All right, so template module. We have a source, which has to be written in a Jinja 2 template. And we're just going to call that source index.html.j2. We're going to create that in the same directory as this playbook. And then the destination is going to be wherever we want this template to create a file. Now, I'm pretty sure that I don't think template is going to make the folder path for you. So var www.html index.html. I think it'll make the file, but not the folder path. But we'll double check that. Let's see, what else did I want to do? So we've looked at the service module, we've done Firewall D, we've done Yum, we've done template, we've looked at debug. Let's see, what else could we do? Oh, we could do line and file. So let's do this. So now that we've made our index.html file, we're going to add a line to the file. All right, so line in file. There's a lot of stuff you can do with this, especially with regex. But what we're going to do with line in file, we're going to say the path, and this path is var www.html index.html, and the line that we want to add, what it's going to do is check to see if this line exists, and if it doesn't, it will append it to the end of your file. Now, there are some options in line and file that will say, you would insert this after a particular point. And again, as I mentioned, you can use the regex command, and the regex is going to find what particular pattern. And then depending on for state, if you want absent or present, it will either remove whatever that pattern is, or it would replace the regex pattern with whatever line that you have. So the line that we're going to do is adding a line via line in file module, and the state is going to be present. And I've realized I've made a mistake with my spaces, even though I don't think this is actually going to matter, but I do know you need to be consistent. So I don't know if it's consistency throughout the entirety of your play, or if it's consistency within just your modules themselves. All right, so we got the line in file. I think that's all I wanted to do with this particular video and module, video about modules. So let's end this, save, and we're going to put it to the test. So one thing that I will be doing on my exam is doing the check syntax. That'll save a little bit of time. Deploy web server, syntax, check. And what this will do is catch some boneheaded stuff like, yeah, I've probably made a mistake there. So line 28, this looks like with the line in file module. So let's take a look. Let's see what I have here, or what I've done wrong, rather. That looks right. Name, line in file. I'm not sure what I've done wrong with that. We're on the right level for name, add a line to the file. Oh, line file. Line in file. That should work better. Syntax check. Yep, it didn't complain this time. All right, so I said I was going to use the debug module. What I could do is add debug at a couple of spots to say, hey, we're at this or at that. But if you use your names with your playbooks, then, or with your tasks, then you kind of get the idea of what's going on there. So Ansible playbook, deploy web server, and let's see what happens. So it gathers the facts. I'm just doing it for that one server. It's currently installing Apache and possibly Firewall D. This will take just a bit because I know Apache is not installed on this server right now. All right, so we got changed, and it looks like it did not need. So populate. Oh yeah, I forgot to make my template. Of course. All right, so let's make our template. Index.html j2. All right, so template file. This is literally what we want to have in our index file. HTML head. We're not going to have anything in the header. And if you're a web developer out there, you're probably, keeling over in your grave about my HTML skills, but it's been a while. Like the last time I really worked with HTML, I think HTML4 had just come out. Either HTML3.2 or HTML4. I can't remember which one was the current last time I really touched HTML. So we'll do welcome to, and we'll use the variable Ansible facts host name. We'll just let that be our website for right now. And I'm actually not going to close the body tag. Actually, this is probably pretty terrible HTML because I have the little line and file thing. So I'm just going to leave the body tag open. We'll see what happens. Okay, so let's run our playbook again. And notice that the playbook stopped. Like once it failed a task, it did not continue. So what we should have this time is a bunch of OKs up until we get populate the index file. All right, so we got changed for that and add line to file. So in theory, this should be available. So let me open up my browser here and let's see what happens. So http labrel.an01/index.html. And there is our welcome to labrel.an01 and adding a line via the line in file module. So our Playbook was successful, and we touched several modules with that, albeit real basic kind of stuff to do. But I would imagine on the RHCE exam, I mean, yeah, there may be some advanced stuff, but I think the idea is they just want to make sure you have an understanding of how to use some of these modules. Now, your definition of commonly used modules might be completely different, but I figure this is kind of a basic thing that hits several modules that you would use, such as service and template and the like. So I hope you found the video useful. If you did, make sure you click like. Also, if you have not subscribed yet, make sure you click the subscribe button and ring the bell when you do so you can be aware of when new content comes available. And I want to thank returning subscribers for watching another video. Don't forget to leave comments. You can ask questions, leave critique, leave praise. I will respond as I have both time and ability, so I might not get to everything, but I'll respond as much as I can. As always, thanks for taking the time to watch, and I'll see you the next time.